So, to all of you, the one theme which I heard more often than anything is a kind of lack of interest in technology, science, mathematics, and so on in the general population and in the government. I also heard lack of resources, which we implicitly understand. I don't understand the following. A lot of people where you live have consumer electronics. They have mobile phones, many of which are smartphones. They have laptops, they have iPads and other kinds of things. Where do they think those come from? They don't grow on trees. So, why shouldn't the people in these countries, in your countries, benefit from the production of these kinds of devices? We were just doing a little, Andreas and I did a little bit of math. Apple sold 10 million version 6 iPhones in a weekend. Now, I don't know what the price was, but suppose it was $600. 600 times 10 million is $6 billion in 2 days. Now, that's bigger than the GDP of some countries. Why don't we find a way to let the countries who are benefiting from the consumer electronics also benefit from their production? That should be a big target. So my question to all of you is, how do we do that?
Okay, so does any of you feel like they want to tackle that question? Or do you think this is something what is your answer to that question?
Well,
okay, PJ.
Well, the business of business is business itself, right? I mean, that's how the companies have always, they're answerable to their shareholders, or this has been the belief. So, when, they want, Apple is a good company, Google or Microsoft engages with many of the universities, say in India. Apple has no university program to talk about, and I'm sure Tim Cook is very hungry at me for saying this, but so it's one thing to have these devices and profits emerging from them. It takes a much longer vision to know that these things have to be supported in the long term. You need to spread them out, spread the gains out, especially from the developing countries, especially a country like India. Like I said in my presentation, the youth of the world is in India. If you have 400 million kids below 15 years old, they need to be trained well. And it's of course an Indian problem, but it's also the problem of the world. And if people do this with some foresight, it will help everybody. So I mean, I have no magic answers to get them to do it, but it'll be nice.
Well, I think that there is no really direct way to take advantage as you think in Ecuador, because essentially we are not really a big market. So actually in Ecuador, the cost of phone calls are not that cheap. And if you think about the devices itself, they almost cost twice as much. So I don't know, maybe the new iPhone is around, for sure, more than $1,000. So we cannot really benefit, we cannot negotiate with, we are not a big market. So.
I guess one part of the problem is that most of the developing countries do not take part in the development of these devices. They are consumers, or maybe they assemble them, but they don't share in the development. So people will not recognize that if they send their kids to studying science and technology, will at the end of the day really have a part in the development of this. So I think this is one issue, and this is not so easy to change. I think this was part of PJ's talk. And then the other thing, I think, if one has access to the right people, why don't we try to convince Apple to give 50 cents for any sold iPhone 6 to the IMU to set up programs for mathematics in developing countries, something like that. I mean, if that would work out.
We would use it well and effectively. We are very accountable.
My observation is in Cambodia that the young people know that what is in their hand is high technology and it's made by people. and also they can. But the thing is, they are too far from what is made these tools happen and made to make it hardware and software. Even an example is even most of the university students don't know that how to work together between mathematics and computer science to do something that is useful for the society. It's not yet coming to the students as good as like in developed country. And we recently has events to promote faculties, to promote new departments open, like my faculty just have been opened for about 6-7 months, and now we are starting to enroll the first generation of students, and we have a chance to show the embedded system and show them directly how to code and how it results immediately, hands-on examples, and they are very impressed, and that is what we need to show them directly that they can do it, but step by step according to their backgrounds. And if we motivate them too far away from their background, they will not know that afterwards they can get a job. Like you said, the main concern is afterwards they will have a job. And if we can show them, okay, this we have to show, this we have to teach you, and you will later on work in that as engineer or as whatever, then I think they will get interest more and more.
What's the role of the entrepreneur in all of this? Because somewhere along the line, people get attracted to study things because they think they'll have a job to do with what they've learned. But if there aren't any jobs, then that's not the incentive isn't there. You don't create jobs unless you have people willing to create companies. So is there part of this equation creating conditions in which new companies can be readily formed? And is that a barrier?
I think in these countries, at least in India, the middle class is very risk averse. Otherwise, of the vast population of the country, I think only a small fraction works in organized sector or what is called a salaried job, a guaranteed salaried job. Most of them, including the farmers or the local businessmen, local vendors, they are all entrepreneurs. I mean, they take risk every day. They take risk every day. It's just that when you get a university education and you have the option of working for IBM with good salary for the rest of your life or any such company, that's when you weigh that against the perceived risks of entrepreneurship, somehow this wins. So your social status is better. And there is risk averseness and what Silicon Valley says, or opposite of what Silicon Valley says. There is no glorification of failure, or there is no valuing of failure.
We don't glorify failure, but we recognize it as a sign of experience. I mean, when you're looking for a new CEO, sometimes the first guy you want to talk to is somebody who had a business failure, so he would recognize the symptoms of the business failure earlier than somebody who never had that experience. Absolutely. You want them in charge because they'll be able to figure out what to do.
So that element is largely missing.
So we don't want to send everybody out and say you should fail. That would not be a good message. We all heard that the governments were not persuaded that investment in this space was important. What would we want them to propose to the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund in the way of infrastructure development? Because some of the really interesting outcomes in this space have been because there's enough infrastructure to take advantage of it. The Khan Academy was a really good example of that. The invention of Skype, for instance, didn't rely on a great deal of infrastructure in Phnom. It relied on a great deal of infrastructure everywhere else that could take advantage of the software. But if we were going to ask the World Bank to make investments in each of the countries we've been talking about, what would we ask them to do? This is on the presumption that infrastructure counts. So
I would confirm that it is a success. What we have done now, the project that we have with IWR, they have strict conditions those who won this project, if they are staffs, they should not have benefits from this money. But what is missing, what is lacking, like infrastructure, like even renovating rooms and equipments for the labs and so on, they provide. And this is the first step, which is very, very necessary. I think our colleagues also confirm that how difficult it is if such equipment, if they don't have, they cannot work, just theory, and what to do with that. There's no hand-on experiments possible, and something like this, I think we can continue. I mean, provide possibilities for local developing countries. There's no high-level researchers, so they don't compete with other countries. If they spread the announcement worldwide, they will not win it. But like the World Bank that we won, it's only local. They provide for local people the opportunities to bid between each other, and then there are opportunities to win and to start with improvement.
As a woman, I got actually my bachelor and master's degree from Baghdad University, and I got the chance to teach there for 3 years. Salary wasn't an issue for me as a woman, because in our culture, we are not supposed to, support the family. This is the responsibility of the woman, of the man. To me, actually, this is something that I felt myself, and even when I was teaching. The problem is that there is very limited hands-on experience for students. Students usually they cannot afford having their own computers at home, so they have to rely on the resources that's available on the university. They would usually have like 2 hours lab session every week. This is the amount of time that they can spend working on doing the programming or anything. So they wouldn't feel like the beauty. Unlike, when I went to the United States, I had computer, I was able to work 24/7 literally. So when I was actually learning something, I was able to implement it directly, which wasn't the case for my students. So I think if we wanted to do anything to help, it will be actually, labs and stuff like that. Try to increase kind of create more opportunity for students to see the immediate, the results of their own work. That might help and encourage people to go to computer science and join this kind of field.
I'll start with a comment that will get me in trouble. First of all, I'm actually not convinced that math and computer science is essential in developing countries. I actually think that in the perspective of German education system, computer science and math, I would think they fall into the gymnasium part. And I think for developing countries, they more need like Realschule. So if you are to push something that's not essential, I guess what you need is an ecosystem. So you need something beyond than just asking money from a government. Perhaps what's a better idea is, for instance, a sustainable solution. Think of your government as an investor. Present your government a business model. Tell them that if you increase the investment in mathematics, science, in 10 years or 5 years, you're going to get a guaranteed return. So I think that sounds more sustainable than just asking for injection of money.